Welcome back to Beyond Adjustments, where we go beyond cracking backs and dive into the real conversations around health, wellness, and optimizing our lives. If you're tired of generic advice like just eat better and sleep more, and this is probably the show for you. Now, I have to say, Dr. Noah Segal is back for this third round, guys. And at this point, I think he's just secretly trying to take over the podcast, but I get it. He's got a lot to say, and so do I. So today, we're tackling chronic stress and inflammation, why they're quietly wrecking our health, and how we can actually reverse the damage. I spent a lot of time working with chiropractors, as you guys know, and I'll tell you, stress and inflammation are at the root of almost every issue they see. I talk to doctors every day who are seeing patterns that just go way beyond back pain. So today we're breaking it all down in a way that's practical and backed by real experience. Let's get into it. Dr. Noah Segal, my friend, welcome back to Beyond Adjustments, sir.
Thank you so much, Amin. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back. Let's start with this. I want to make sure I take your time into consideration because I know you have patients lined up right after this. So I appreciate you making the time. Stress is it's not just an emotional experience. It's a full body response. At least that's what I think it is, and what some chiropractors have been telling me it is. I talk to chiropractors who tell me they can literally see stress in someone's posture, like their muscle tension, like even how they breathe. And we've gotten so used to being in this high alert like state that we don't even notice it anymore. So let me ask you this. Can you break down what's actually happening inside the body when we experience chronic stress?
Of course. It's we don't notice the stress, right? But I think we tend to notice, I guess, the symptoms, or sometimes we don't notice the symptoms until they're more severe. There's subtle ones and there's more significant ones, and it's not a linear line, but it's a progression. And
Yeah.
stress is interesting to our generation or our culture. We used to talk a lot about in my educational days when I'm always being educated, but I guess my school days, the the difference in the type of stress, right? Because stress is a funny word. Stress doesn't have to be a negative thing. We have a negative connotation with stress, but it doesn't have to be only negative. Stress is required for growth. Often, the first thing we tell patients who have bone loss, right, which is very common in middle age to older people, more common in Caucasian women, but it's, older people. Bones need stress to grow. So a certain level of stress and weight bearing stress is certainly important for growth. And we tell kids, you have children, anyone who has children knows, when you're raising kids, the stresses they go through as an adult, you see that as, well, son or well, daughter, that it's going to be okay. That stress it's going to make you a better person. Right.
Mhm.
But yeah, you mentioned it being a whole body experience. And yes, of course, we talk about this sort of a like posture, like stress, fight or flight. And we know, right, the common terminology, fight or flight. And I guess I think it's common knowledge. I don't want to speak over anybody, but most people have heard of certain hormones like epinephrine, norepinephrine, right? It's that release of chemistry that puts us into that fight or flight mode, or the response from it. And that changes our whole physiology, right? It pulls
Yeah.
blood away from our core and pulls blood into our arms and legs so we can literally run or fight. And it used to be, right, that again, going back to my education when I was a student, the lion was chasing us and it was stressful. And then, the lion either ate us and the stress was over, or we got away from the lion and the stress was over. But it was a short period of stress, high stress, a short period. Now we
Yeah.
seem to have either low, moderate, or severe stress for extended periods of time. And it could be even anything like I'm on the podcast with you and trying to be here now with you, and my phone was ringing, right? So it was on top of something that was vibrating. I didn't know if you could hear it or disturbing disturbing the podcast. So I moved it, right? And it's that constant stress that is new. And so I don't know if we know everything, but I'll tell you a little bit about what we do know, how this is
Yeah.
affecting us, right? We don't know
Yeah.
everything, but what we do know is that we have an increased chronic release of norepinephrine, epinephrine, cortisol. And what that does, we've talked a lot about my expertise in the microbiome and the
Sure.
cellular levels or micronutrition, right? Which is cellular levels or serologic levels, just body levels of vitamins and minerals, amino acids. And with chronic stress, besides just the mental fatigue or that feeling of like, I'm just done, I'm tired, I'll put my head down, we have the release of those hormones, which
Yeah.
change the diversity of the microbiota, right? So the change in the diversity, it's almost like that one thing stress gets us to be one thing in our gut and one thing in our blood. And we need diversity in diet, diversity in stress levels, not just constant. So when we get to that singular bacterial, it's not really ever going to be one bacterial strain or species, but it changes and lowers the amount of diversity. And
Mm.
that usually leads or that feeds into increased cytokines. And cytokines is also a complex word, but I think we remember it as a culture from the COVID days, right? If people think back to those COVID days, they might remember something called the cytokine storm, right? And that's what was killing people more than COVID was the body's response to COVID. It was like, okay, COVID's what it is. It's a viral, infection, but certain people's bodies based off of lifestyle, diet, comorbidities, and genetics had a super response to this virus that was an immune response, but it was an elevated immune response, so much so that the body killed itself. And
Mm.
that's part of this chronic stress. That's it. I used an acute stressful situation
Sure.
to understand a chronic situation, but that's the
Yeah.
same thing
Yeah.
that happens is right. The loss and the change of the bacteria, the increase in inflammation, and you also have modulators of this response. And the modulators is the money. And we've talked a lot about, I use money as an analogy a lot of times with patients and in life for cellular health, right? If we have enough money to pay our bills, it feels good. If we have enough to pay our bills and save, it feels even better. But when we're living hand to mouth or paycheck to paycheck, it can be stressful. And our bodies use not money, but they use chemistry, zinc, B vitamins, magnesium, vitamin C, right? These micronutrients that I study in my patients are used to buffer the stress response. So it's that when it's chronic enough, we don't have time to heal. We don't have time to repair. And that's happening on a physiologic level, right? A
Sure.
systemic level. So it's not, I mean, that's when you say like stress affects the whole body. Yes, you can see it
Yeah.
in the posture, you can see it in how we
Yeah.
breathe, and we can see it in our blood. We can
Yeah.
see it in our gut and cardiovascular health, right? I don't know if you have cardiovascular health in the family issues, but that's a common issue for Americans as we age. And
Sure.
that's a major player stress, chronic stress. And the stress we're talking about is not the healthy stress of exercise or the healthy stress
Mhm.
of growing and changing and
Right.
being a growing individual. It's the chronic stress and not dealing with it that leads to those cardiovascular events through that inflammatory loop, through that change in microbiota diversity, through that loss of micronutrition. And the end result is death and disease, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, there's definitely like a physiological impact and it's not just because of, my own experience or whatever, just like all the research that's out there. I mean, as far as like your cortisol levels, your like there's a huge impact to your nervous system. There's like nervous system dysfunction when it comes to this. Inflammation can be caused by these stress levels and whatnot, et cetera, and so on. Like all the things that you're saying, cardiovascular, et cetera. And it's huge. And honestly, this is why I love talking about this because people hear stress and think, oh, I just need a vacation. but
I need a
but I,
vacation for my vacation usually. When I get back with the kids, it's like,
same,
right.
same. And I've seen chiropractors working with patients who they have gut issues, chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, like things don't seem stress related at first, but But then you start asking about their daily life, and suddenly everything makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And here's something crazy. When I talk to chiropractors, like a lot of them can tell who's under chronic stress before the patient even says anything. Like their posture changes, their breathing is shallow, their nervous system is basically like stuck in, like you said, a fight or flight mode. And if you're constantly in that state, your body never gets a chance to heal.
Yeah.
It's insane how much impact it has on your body. And so one of the things they mention is inflammation. I want to I want to touch on that just a little bit. The inflammation in our bodies. Maybe kind of dig a little deeper into that. Is inflammation? I know this might sound like a stupid question, but is inflammation always bad, or does it have like a useful function that we're
No,
misunderstanding?
of course. And this is a conversation I have with patients all the time because it almost seems like we're looking for that. Like, doctors dealing in nutrition, doctors dealing in functional medicine, doctors of chiropractic dealing with chronic pain patients, doctors using the word inflammation all the time. Right. And I tell my patient, I'm like, I don't want to just be another talking head. And, you go, have you roll your eyes? Of course he's telling me about inflammation so he can treat me more. So I'll answer the question, is inflammation always bad? And the answer is no. But before we get deeper into inflammation, thinking about the thoughts, right? Because we talked about mental stress, being stressed, that mental thoughts are words. And not to get religious, but, look, most of the world's population is one of the three religions, Judaism, Islamic, or Christian. There's a lot of Hindus too, but we all generally have an understanding that the world was created with words, or created with, I don't want to get into that, but with words, we'll say with words. And what's unique or interesting about bringing science back into it is that there was a Japanese study done on water. And when the man who was doing the research looked at water under a electron microscope, he saw that the words that he said to the water changed the chemical appearance, the optical physics, the optics of it, the actual look and the shape of the molecular structure. Not really changing the chemistry because, water is water, it's
Water is
H2O.
water. Correct.
But the way it looks under, we know every snowflake is unique, right? So we know that it can look different under a microscope. And so the molecular structure of the water changed. If he said love, love, love to the water, it was more of like a soft, rounder molecular structure. If he said, hey, 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 it was more of an angular, sharp. And, so if words can have an impact on
Mm,
the structure and the appearance of water, it could be proposed and surmised that perhaps, since we're made of water, certainly our thoughts can impact, our existence, our wellness, or the opposite. So
for
thoughts,
sure.
right, are mental, and mental health can have an impact on our actual anatomy, even
Yeah.
if it's just thoughts. And that's just a
Yeah.
fascinating, I mean, potentially, right? I'm extrapolating out a study on water to health. So, that's not a peer reviewed double blind study, but as you
I love
mentioned,
the
research,
correlation. It makes sense. Yeah.
as you mentioned in the research, there's just a tremendous amount of research into this concept of changing molecules with a stressor, right? A stressor could be a word, a stressor could be an action. In physics, it's something impacting something else.
Mm,
And inflammation is something that impacts something else. And just like stress, it's not always bad. Obviously, there's a reason we have inflammatory cascades. I think the easiest way to think about it is an ankle sprain, right? What is one of the most important things you do for an ankle sprain? Throw it out there if you think about it.
I mean, ice it,
Ice it. Okay, what about another? Do you have
wrap
another
it.
one? Wrap it. Okay, let's talk about wrapping it. Wrapping is putting compressive pressure on that anatomy. And so it's rest, protect, ice, elevate, right? So the protection and that's what inflammation does, right? If you sprain an ankle, or someone sprains an ankle, it fills up with fluid, edema, inflammation. And that inflammation is like a natural brace. But when bracing, we don't want to brace all the time, because if we brace all the time, our bodies give up. So I will tell patients who come to me with back pain, sure, you can use a brace. Only use it when you're moving. If you're sitting or standing, don't use it. But if you're exercising or moving or lifting or whatever, use your brace for a short period of the day. Because if we we really don't want to use an exogenous, an outside brace. We want to use our muscles and our, our core and our back. But our bodies,
Sure.
man, we all have bodies. My body wanted to sleep today, and I had to tell my body, get up.
Yep.
Bodies just want to sleep. Bodies want to bodies want to watch TV, right? Bodies want to be comfortable. And
Yes.
it's stressful to be uncomfortable. And that's where that stress can be healthy, because sometimes we have to go outside our comfort zone in
Yeah.
many ways, physically, spiritually, emotionally, health wise,
Yeah.
financially. But the inflammation, when it's chronic, so it has a purpose, absolutely has a purpose. But if it never goes away, it feeds into that chronic disease state, and that
Hmm.
drains our bank accounts, right? The bank account being the nutrients, our bank account being the
Sure.
microbiome diversity. So
Yeah.
that's the issue with inflammation or anything. And, we'll talk about balance as we go through this, but that's
For
what we're
sure.
looking for is
No,
balance.
that makes total sense. And your analogy on the brace, my kids are in a brace 21 hours a day, and because of that, their muscles are weakened. So they have to
Yes.
kind of counteract. And what they literally have an hour and 20 minutes worth of exercises that they have to do on a daily basis for their core, for their back muscles because of that. Because yes, the brace is helping. Yeah, it's fixing their scoliosis, but it's weakening other parts of the body because the body's relying on the brace. So yeah, I totally get that. And I I think it's key, right, to understand it the way you're presenting it too, as far as inflammation is concerned, because I see a lot of people jump into these extreme, like anti-inflammatory diets, or start taking every supplement they see on Instagram or TikTok, but they don't
And
understand the
then
full picture.
they stop when Fox
Yeah.
News says vitamins can cause cancer. It's too, yeah, that's an
It
interesting.
is. There's these two extremes that they listen to, and honestly, inflammation is act like you said, it's actually our body's way of repairing itself.
Yes.
But when we're constantly stressed, it never gets turned off. Is that
Right.
accurate? Right. So
Yes.
so instead of healing, we're in a constant kind of breakdown mode.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know.
listen, think of it all could be analogies, and I don't want to over analogy life, but like I mean, water. I mean, I shouldn't be drinking out of a plastic bottle, but I'm in the office and I didn't bring my water bottle today. So anyway,
Right.
water, right?
Speaking of.
There's an eye that's always watching us, right? So
Yeah.
water is really good. But I remember when I did my first triage at the end of a marathon, the only thing they gave us for like frontline triage was packets of salt. Because if all we drank is water, and we're sweating and exercising and water, 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 we need
Yeah.
water to live. But if we only drink water and we sweat out all of our minerals, and guess what? We go into a dangerous state that could be fatal.
Sure.
So everything has to be on and off, on and off, on and off. And this, we're going on a great tangent, but this is actually the challenge of
Yeah.
healthcare. And this is every
Yeah.
single patient needs to hear this. Every listener needs to hear this.
Yeah.
The body has an incredible ability to adapt. And people get frustrated. They say, I was getting adjusted, and in the beginning it felt really good, and now I've plateaued. Or,
Mhm.
hey, I was taking this supplement and I felt really good, and now I've plateaued. And that
Mhm.
plateau is always going to happen. And we're always going to need to change what we're doing, change what we're listening to, change what we're thinking, change our exercise. I mean, anyone who goes to the gym knows they have leg day and they have arm day. And after a
Sure.
while, they have to change their circuit, right? But for some reason, in other ways, we don't understand this, and we need to understand this. Patients need to understand this. Doctors need to understand this. So the patient doesn't need to change doctors all the time, per se, but the
Yeah.
doctor needs to change his therapy. And I think that's what happens is we get not, I don't use lazy, it's negative, but we get comfortable,
Yeah.
right? We get comfortable. And this is
Yeah.
where, I know you get excited about talking about AI. I know you get excited about talking about technology, but this is where that can help drive efficiency in healthcare and also
Yeah.
patient outcomes, because that will take us out of our comfort zone and help us
Yeah.
be creative, unless we don't use it and we need to use it. So
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And by the way, it's okay that we're going off on tangents because I'm kind of thinking about it as we're talking. I I think we'll just kind of stick on this topic for this podcast. We do have, I know we have a couple of things lined up, and if you prepared for it, I apologize.
all
But
good questions.
I because this is such a heavy topic, and I think if we're going off on tangents here and there, it's okay. And speaking of, this is what I use to keep me focused and sometimes relieve some stress, believe it or not. And yes, I can solve it. But so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I think part of the issue is, and when it comes to the way stress is being painted, the way inflammation in your body is being painted, everything is just from a kind of negative, 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 negative. And even those kind of pieces of information that we're finding out there are actually adding
to the
to
stress.
your stress level. Instead of taking it and saying, okay, yeah, this is going to help me. What we're going to be stressed out about making sure we're doing it the right way to get our stress levels down. So, and that's just something that even I dealt with. I think everybody deals with it, right? But but it's important that we look at it in a way that it's something, yes, that we need to keep under control. And there's many ways about it. And most of them are natural. Most of them are maybe you introduce meditation into your life. Maybe you spend more time in prayer. Maybe, whatever the case may be, and the words have power. Words have power. My Someone in my family, I won't call them out, they have this paper, which I might start doing too because it's actually working, on their mirror. And there are these positive thoughts about who they are, what they can do, and what they're not. And even that in and of itself is reducing their stress level. And they have a lot going on.
Yeah,
So words have power, just like you were talking about that water experiment, right?
it's
Um,
crazy stuff.
it's insane. But I want to talk a little bit about the warning signs and kind of what are some of the early, because we don't have to get to these extreme situations. It just doesn't have to be the case.
Right.
Um so what are some early warning signs that stress is actually wrecking your health or about to?
Right. So I don't know, it's funny. We all pick on the white hair, and I've got my camera keeps going a little dark, but I've got some white hairs, and going
I beat you.
bald, whatever.
Yeah,
Yes,
I win.
but I think the more, I guess, astute or common, that's not necessarily always associated with age, right? Because you can have a 4-year-old who is exhibiting signs of chronic stress, and it's not going to be white hair, but sleep disturbances. Again, not to get into the biochemistry, but that circadian rhythm with the norepinephrine and the cortisol, but sleep disturbances, weight changes, either gain or loss, skin changes, whether people could see who looks vibrant and who looks stressed, look, gut changes, right? Not necessarily, they're not going to notice the changes of the bacteria and the diversity, but they might notice, increased constipation or increased diarrhea or just gastrointestinal symptoms, mental health, you know,
Yeah.
snapping, anger,
Yep.
anxiety,
Yep.
sexual changes, not being interested or
Yep.
being interested, but not
Yep.
being able or whatever. So
Right.
those are all like early warning signs that, by the
Sure.
way, it'll be very easy for someone exhibiting or experiencing those symptoms. And if it's always prudent to make sure nothing else is going on, like, we'll say cancer or whatever, but usually it's not cancer. And but what happens is they go into the healthcare system and then they find out they have high cholesterol and they find out this, and then that increases the stress, but it doesn't really solve the problem. And,
Yeah.
if I could give one piece of advice, that would be like a lifelong advice. And I'm
Yeah.
speaking to myself, being a Libra, my astrological sign is the scales, and finding the balance, finding that you mentioned meditation, you mentioned prayer. We don't have to be all about meditation and prayer. We can say exercise because there's an
Yeah.
aspect of letting go, which is also an exercise, but finding the balance between control and letting go. And I think that's I mean, again, I don't want to sound like it's, my soapbox or whatever, but I think that's my gift and that's my practice expertise because I came from the health food store, natural products environment.
Yes.
And that environment is full of neuroses and the idea of control. My mom, you see this a lot. I don't want to talk about my mom. They'll talk about other people, generalized. You see people who try to really control their health. Sometimes they get sick anyway. And so there's an aspect of control. We should obviously be doing the right things and we should talk about what those right things are. But we also have to let go because my joke to patients when I'm enrolling them in my programs and I'm trying to be on the same page as them and help them understand prognosis and expectations, I remind them that not to be negative, right? I don't want to sell fear or be fear mongering, but I also don't
Yeah.
want to be negative in this way. But it's like, you can eat wheatgrass, exercise every day, be the best biohacker, spend $1 million a year on your health, and
Yeah.
have a heart attack, get cancer, or get hit by a bus. So
Yeah.
they're right. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, and
Of course.
that sometimes is stressful for people.
Yeah.
But if they have the right approach to not to understanding that we're not fully in control, and it doesn't have to be religious. I mean, I'm a religious guy, but it doesn't have to be religious. But
Right.
because they always say there's no atheist in a foxhole, right? Letting go is also part of that healthy approach to inflammation, healthy approach to our health. So finding the balance, right? Because I'm involved and I take that responsibility. So
Yeah.
my gift is being an individual who has personal experience, anecdotal experience, professional experience, and then also letting the patients give over that to me. Like,
Hmm.
you deal with marketing. What a great feeling it is for us to let go and give it over to you, and we get rid
Yeah.
of that stress. I'm still
Yeah.
involved, right? Potentially, but I'm not stressed about it. And so
Right.
that's the gift of utilizing a practice like mine and a service like yours that we give back to humanity, because we can't take away all the problems, but we can help deal with it in a healthy way that turns those problems into blessings.
Yeah. So yeah, I love everything that you had to say there. I think that balance is key. But balance in kind of every area of our life. So a couple things came to mind for me. One, and that's you saw me jotting some things down because I didn't want to forget. But one is there are things that are literally not in our hands that we have no control over, like zero control over, no matter what we do, no matter how we think about it, no matter who we pay, no matter it doesn't, we have zero control over it, yet we stress out about it. Yet we're constantly thinking about it. What if, what if, what if, what if, constantly replaying it in our minds and clogging up all that space and all that real estate in our brain and in our thoughts and in our, in our emotions. It all adds to it. We can't If we can't control a situation, we need to be able to kind of train our minds, our thoughts, all of it to not really overthink that situation because we can't really do anything about it because the outcome is going to be what the outcome is going to be.
Right.
That is what it is, right? And again, the whole balance thing, it's so important. Like, so I'll give myself as an example. So currently, I'm on a health journey. Okay, and I have a health coach. Shout out Dr. Juan Escobar. He's the man. He has a coaching program, top notch, and and I'm in week 4, okay? And he's got me on a specific diet, right? He's got me on a workout regimen and it's all balanced out. He's working helping me to work with habit stacking when it comes to my exercising and whatnot. Like now I do 30 push-ups before I brush my teeth, 30 push-ups after I brush my teeth just to get them in, just to say I did them, right? And it's nothing. It's 30 push-ups, right? But there was a day where I couldn't do 5, you know? So there's habit stacking and there's this balance in your life. And I could tell you, me, as far as my brain fog, I'm 4 weeks in. I haven't had any sugar, carbohydrates, or anything. There's fiber, there's protein, there's everything in my diet. Brain fog going away. My memory is getting better. My I I'll just say gut issues. My gut issues are subsiding. Like
Yeah.
I don't have this chronic fatigue that I felt. I wasn't waking up in the morning, like, I gotta get up. Now yes, I get up groggy, whatever, and all this stuff. I'm still,
Oh, you're
overweight.
not
I'm
you're
still
not
working on that.
perfect,
No, 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 no. I
but you're
mean,
better.
I will be one day. No, I'm just kidding. But but that balance I think is key because I'm living it. Like I'm not just saying it from like studies. I at one point I lived one extreme. Okay, like this is years ago when I really started my health journey, and I was like running every single day. And on the days that I didn't run, I did weights. I would do 2 or 3 24-hour fasts in a week, and I mean I was like gun ho, right? But that wasn't the healthy approach to it. By the end of it, I was exhausted. Like my knees were killing me, shin splits. Like it was ugly.
It wasn't
It was
balanced.
ugly. It wasn't balanced. So I'm taking a different approach now, right? And then and this is an 8-week program. Even after the 8-week program, there's a way to kind of get yourself back into the groove of a not and I'm not calling it I'm on a diet. I'm just my diet is different right now. My diet will look different in a year in 8 weeks. But we have to keep that balance. We have to make sure that we're incorporating exercise. We have to make sure that we're eating the right things. It's all connected. We have to make sure that we're keeping our emotions in check. I
Yes.
tell this to my kids all the time. Being logical is a skill.
Mm. Yeah, because the initial response is emotional.
Yeah. Using logic is a skill, and you have to train yourself to do it well because our emotions will kick in immediately. Um,
And that's the thoughts, and that's the words that impact the chemistry because it's all information. It all goes back to language. But you are mentioning biohacking essentially,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
because
yeah.
what you're talking about is a form of biohacking. And,
Sure.
this philosophical stuff is huge and it's important. People also need like takeaways, right? People listening, they want to know, okay, so what's the first thing? So
Right.
if we want to talk about biohacking, I think an important concept to talk about is the telomere. Have you heard of the telomere? Do you know about the telomere?
I have not.
So, we have cells, and that cells have DNA, and DNA is the information, right? It's the language, it's the code, it's the book that's
Right.
read for the cell to do what it's supposed to do. And cells, at the end of their lifespan, they have to replicate. So, what tells the cell to replicate is when it gets to the telomere. And the shorter the telomere, cells stop replicating. So, dying, right, is only occurring because we run out of telomerase telomeric information. The end of the code is this little tail, and that tail, when it gets shorter, 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 that's when we become 120 years old and we die, right?
Right.
So this fountain of youth people talk about is associated with the telomere. The telomere being DNA is impacted by oxidative stress. So how can we be healthy? How can we biohack? How can we live longer? We could talk about reducing oxidative stress, which ultimately reduces inflammation, right? So it all comes back full circle. And
Sure.
the first step is just awareness, right? So just us talking right now in the past half hour, that's step
Mhm.
one, right?
Yep.
Like take away first step in reversing chronic stress damage, chronic inflammatory damage, awareness. Then taking that awareness and taking the next thing, which is an actionable step. And the first thing is actually a literal step. I would argue that walking is probably the easiest, cheapest, you know, and most impactful first
Most
step
impact.
to
Yes.
relieving chronic stress.
Yes. Agreed.
Yesterday, I was stressing out. My wife was stressing out. And then an hour later, she called me. She's like, I went for a walk. I feel so much better. You should do the same. I looked at my schedule. I said, I can. I stood up from my chair. I went for a walk. It was a beautiful, breezy day, blue sky, sunny South Florida, breezy. It was like
Right.
not too hot, not humid. It was
Right.
great. Went for a walk. And I decided I usually walk to this place and I stop, but I decided to not stop, just walk. And getting through that first barrier of stopping was huge. And I
Yeah.
did feel like I had a change in my day, in my
I
outlook,
agree with that.
just
Yeah.
from being aware and then taking a walk. So anyone who's
Walking.
listening, paying attention, wants to know what's the first thing they could do to help reverse chronic stress and all the damage it's caused and the shortening of their telomeres is going to
Yeah.
be awareness, taking a walk. And
Yeah.
you mentioned a lot about diet. I don't know what diet he has you on. And what's interesting is different diets are better for different people and different
Mhm.
times and different goals. So there
Mhm.
is not one in particular, but there is
Exactly.
studies and there is research and there is information that's pretty old already at this point. Nutrients is a great journal. Nutrients is like a high level, meta data analysis, peer reviewed, great. It's not a scam journal, right? And in 2018, they put out a study on essentially they didn't call it biohacking, but they talked about the telomere and what strategies are effective for longevity, right? Everybody wants to live longer. I think we today are talking about living longer, but also with a quality of life, because I don't think any of us want to live longer in this stressful. Well, maybe we would choose it also. It's better than nothing, right? But we can live longer with less stress because of the less stress. And the effective strategies really can be diet
Mm,
and lifestyle, right? And the
mm.
diet that is proposed a lot in the research. And again, I don't know what diet you're on in it, and it doesn't really matter because it's for you in this particular goal, whether it fits into the story that I'm mentioning or not. I'm
Sure.
sure it's the right thing and it's ideal for this particular goal you're set. But
Sure.
we're both Mediterranean genetic people. And
Right.
the Mediterranean diet is very high in legumes. Chickpeas is huge, right? Yeah. Hummus is a big food in the Mediterranean area. I love it. And do you like
Yeah.
your hummus warm or do you like it like cold?
I like it when it's made warm, like when you first make it, like because we'll boil it
Boil the
and then
chickpeas
and then
and
and
then,
then make
yeah,
it, right, and eat it. Yeah, it's amazing. And then sometimes we cut up some meat and, cook it in a little bit of oil and then put it on top and all that. That's amazing, but I even like it cold with a hot pita, like
of
cooked on a
course, of
on an
course, of
open
course.
stove. Oh,
I just think see, people, I don't know, because we always buy it in the refrigerated section. So we take it home, we put it in the fridge, and we eat it cold. But man, when I was living in Israel for the time I did and getting exposure to all these different hummuses, I always loved when it
yeah.
came out warm. And my mom used to make it as a kid and
I
fresh out
make
of
my
the food.
own, by the way.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, my wife does
yeah.
too. Fresh out of the food processor when the chickpeas are still warm. I love that. So anyone
Yeah, yeah.
listening, try to warm up the hummus a little bit too. But anyway,
So good. So
so
good.
a Mediterranean diet, high in legumes, high in nuts and seeds and tahina, right? The sesame seeds and fruit, fresh fruit.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that has been shown to increase the length of the telomere, right?
Mm,
So there are truly effective strategies for increasing longevity, aside from the things we can't control. The things
yeah.
we can
Yeah.
is actually being aware of that. And this goes way beyond 2018, but when it's 2025, we think we're learning things now. In
Yeah.
2018, we knew that a change in your diet changes your lifespan. And the other thing that's important is, I'm a big fan, even though I grew up macrobiotic vegan, I'm a big fan of eating meat, but within balance and less meat, obviously, right? So what lengthens telomeres? Fresh fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, and seaweed. What shortens telomeres? Carbohydrates, refined sugar, refined carbs, and meat, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
pretty basic, it's pretty obvious. And that's, those are, I mean, I gave the secrets, man. There's the secrets, right? The first step in
Love it.
reversing chronic stress damage and chronic
Yeah.
stress is relieving the stress, which is being aware of it and then taking a walk. And then, how can we impact our longevity? And which a biohacking strategy is thinking about that tail of the DNA, that telomere, and lengthening it through eating more hummus, man.
Yeah. Hummus is the key, guys. Go
Yeah.
out and get you some hummus, but also go out and get a recipe and make it yourself because I promise you, you're doing yourself a favor. It's so good.
Let's
Um,
publish one. Let's put one in the notes of, from your grandmother, man. Let's put it in the notes of this
yes,
episode.
actually, I don't know if it's my grandmother or my grandfather, but my dad. I learned how to make it from my dad. He
Fine.
top
So he's
notch.
the one.
But yeah,
Get the
I'll
recipe, man.
yeah, 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 yeah. I'll publish it. But yeah, no, honestly, so going back a little and yeah, I love these tangents that we're going on and I don't want to stop. But what's crazy is we talked about, how the way people look at stress, right? And I think what's crazy is like how looking at how often um people kind of just like, sit back, oh yeah, I'm stressed, I'm fine, but it'll eventually go away and they ignore the signs, right? The things that we've been talking about. And I've seen like from the chiropractors I've been I speak to a lot of chiropractors, as you know. But what I've seen chiropractors that work with patients who think, "Oh, I'm just tired," kind of like the ones that say, "I just need a vacation," or "I just have tight shoulders," and the next thing you know, they're on the edge of burnout or dealing with chronic pain that you know could have been prevented, right?
Prevention.
And yeah, and
Dirty
this is
word, man.
why
Prevention.
I mean, I look, it, the risk-based approach to your life is really can be overdone, but it could be done right, right? Being preventative versus, and being proactive instead of reactive when it comes to our health is a much better way to approach your life, right? Because I
Of
don't want to
course.
get to 75 and say I shoulda, woulda, coulda when I was 45, right? So this is it now's the time for us to make the change. Whatever age you are, now's the time to make that change and there are little changes along the way. And this is kind of this is why I tell people now. I tell people like if you're dealing with like tension, headaches, constant fatigue, don't just power through it. There's a reason. There's a reason it's happening, and I'm getting passionate about it because I'm just thinking about certain people in my life. But
Well,
that
get adjusted, right?
yeah,
And don't worry about whether the doctor takes insurance. It's $30, it's $100, it's 150 for expensive
whatever it is,
chiropractors. Come on. It's like, and
Yes.
it doesn't have to be every day. Get adjusted that month once, and it will
Yes.
alter the stress, which will alter the outcome of your life.
Yes, you took the words
It's not
right out of
complicated.
my mouth. Yeah, absolutely. Get adjusted, people. It's really so it's your body waving a giant red flag. Like literally take heed. And Dr. Noah, he was telling you like these are the things that you could do. Like you have all these symptoms, fatigue, inflammation, gut issues, whatever. The first thing you can do is it's the awareness piece. And then as far as reversing the damage, it'll happen over time. Go for a walk, like all these things, these practical recommendations, in my opinion, really do make a difference. So, and like we're saying, this is where I think chiropractic care is so powerful.
Of
And
course.
and I've seen chiropractors help patients reset their nervous system, literally within minutes, right? Yeah, everybody's different, right? But they're working with the spine, the vagus nerve patterns, and when
Yeah.
you combine that with kind of like, maybe breath work, like we talked about meditation, that's breathing,
And that's the
not the
diaphragm, and that's the
not the
vagus
weird
nerve.
stuff, not the but
Right.
like, real meditation and nutrition, right? Recovery strategies. It's really a game changer, folks. So, okay, we could keep going, but let, I got a challenge question for you, Dr. Siegel. So, what's an unconventional or overlooked stress reducing practice that actually works? I know we talked about walking. What is something that's in your mind or in your opinion that's really unconventional that we should really look a little bit deeper into?
Unconventional. Right. Okay. Because what would be conventional? Like, I guess exercise is conventional, right? Unconventional. I mean, it's conventional for certain cultures, but not the American culture, although it's getting more popular. So forgive me for jumping on a bandwagon, but going under stress. So ice plunges and or saunas.
Okay.
Putting the body into a controlled, stressful environment like the lion, where it's going to be there and then it's going to stop, and it's a
Hmm.
particular type of stress, will increase the resilience for that person. So it therefore is this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where, like, let's say, generally speaking, on a day that ends in Y, we're very stressed. And if the kids yell and are hyper and the wife is stressed, then we yell and it's a stressful situation. But then on a different particular day that ends in Y, we find ourselves doing an ice bath and, for 15 minutes and then out and then back in and then out and then into a sauna or one of those cycles. And then we have that same situation were because we were stressed then, we're not going to be stressed now. I recently had a visit from a friend. I didn't realize that he was going to change my life like this in this moment talking to you about this. But he came down to Florida to visit his mom and who is, we're getting older. So our parents are getting older. And he was talking about how we're under a lot of stress because we have kids and business and responsibilities. Our parents are getting older, we're
Sure.
getting older. And he
Sure.
said, one of the ways that I find that I'm dealing with it is I'm going to judo. And he was saying, I mean, it's exercise, but he was saying basically going into a stressful situation. He was like, dude, once I've been choked out, like nothing else
Yeah.
stresses me out. Like my wife doesn't stress me out. My kids don't stress me out, the
Yeah.
bills. So he's now a better version of himself through
Yeah.
a stressful experience. So I would say that that's unconventional. We're not going to think about decreasing our stress by going through a stressful situation,
Yeah.
but we can think about it through the lens of a cold plunge or a hot sauna. And that is stressful for the body, but then it increases our resilience and therefore decreases stress because it's a period of time.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we're in an ice bath for an extended period of time, we die. So that's the same
Yeah.
as any other stressor, but that would be
Yeah.
an unconventional. I think we did. I think I did. I was not sure how I was going to answer that,
Yeah. Great
but
job. So,
that's
couple,
unconventional.
yeah, no, a couple thoughts, right? So, the I think you said judo was what your friend got
I
into.
think it's judo,
Actually,
right? Right?
yeah, I have
That's
a
like a
buddy of
martial
mine.
art.
Yeah, I have a buddy of mine I've known for years. Actually, I'm going to reach out to him. It's been a minute, but he and his son. So his son got into jujitsu, and he got into it with him. And one, it was a bonding experience for him and his son. And then, like you're saying, his stress level is different. Because I think it has something to do with the training. I think it has something to do with this is one of the most stressful things or hard things that I ever had to go through. And this guy's he's older than me, but and he's competing now, right? But he's a lot calmer, and it really does make a difference.
So you said
And
stress level. Let's think about it because words matter. Stress
yeah,
tolerance, right? His stress
okay,
tolerance is
okay,
increased, and therefore his stress level went down.
I
And that
understand
goes
that.
back to the telomere. We want to think about
Yes.
lengthening, lengthening, lengthening. So, but I'm not trying to
No,
correct
that's
you. I just
no, you are, and I need that. That's good. You're right. Words do matter, and you're right. It's stress tolerance.
because his stress
Um,
went up
it's
in
yes,
some way,
yes,
right?
yes. No, 100%. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like putting your body under tension, like you're saying, like with when I work out, right? At one point, I was at this level, right, and it was just so hard for me to handle. But because I did it so much and consistently, I was able to now add more weights, and that's now what I started with is nothing. I can handle it. Same thing with your stress tolerance. So I completely agree with you. Thank you for correcting me there. One suggestion I would add that I would say is not unconventional, but maybe overlooked is your social life. So a lot of times, just people in general, our culture, we always have to have this, you know, um, there's got to be like a goal or a reason or, something why we're doing this, whatever that activity is. When it comes to your social life, I would recommend you if you don't have this group or a friend, find one. It's not hard, just leave your house and just do nothing. So, meaning get not just do nothing, sit at home and watch your TV, meaning have no plan. Like, say, all right, we're just going to go to this restaurant and we're going to hang out. We're going to talk about things that don't even make sense, you know, and we're just going to talk about nonsense and we're going to pull ourselves out of the everyday. The walking does the same thing because you're pulling out of yourself of the everyday or pulling yourself out of the everyday, but literally take yourself and say, all right, hey, let's go to this, restaurant. Let's go to this playground. Don't be weird if there's little kids there and you don't have kids, don't go. But, just it helps. Why? Because you're now kind of saying your brain is used to this. Everything that you're doing is like all the same thing. They say, oh,
Task,
oh,
task, task,
bills and
task.
task and then boom. But now you're just kind of disconnecting. And again, TV is not it. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. You're
TV
right.
is not it. And if you could do this thing, whatever it is, outside, do it
Yeah, even
outside.
better, even better.
Here's a little tip too. If there's a restaurant that you go to that has outside seating, makes a difference as well. I
Mhm.
I know it sounds weird, but it does. So
So
that's
disconnecting to connect. You're saying
yes.
disconnect to connect. And that's,
Yeah.
again, not to get religious, but anyone can probably understand there's a word called the Sabbath. That's something that's cultural, but people have their own versions of it, right? Americans have Sunday, right? Disconnecting to connect. But we've lost it with the distractions of going from task to task to task. And what you're
Yes.
talking about is awareness, is being here now, which is a form of meditation, which I feel guilty. We're men, we have responsibilities and we want to produce. And sometimes I find that that is so difficult for me to go for that walk or to go to the beach and just be. I have a friend who's always at the beach and he's always like, want to meet me, want to meet me. And I'll go sometimes. And I sit there and it takes me sometimes 45 minutes just to realize that that's all I have to do is just be there.
Yeah.
There's like
Yeah.
awkward silence. You want to talk or, you know, your brain starts going, going, going. So
Yeah.
guys, just don't get frustrated, guys. Like whoever's listening, whoever wants to like pay attention to this, listen to Amin, put it into action, but don't get frustrated because it's not going to happen. Like it's a skill. It's a new
Yeah.
skill. And
Yeah.
we've lost that
Agreed.
as a culture.
I love that. And I'll add this. One of the biggest game changers I've seen, at least in chiropractic practices, is and correct me if I'm wrong or if you but is really movement therapy. Nervous system retraining, right? Things like
Biofeedback.
vibration therapy. Yeah. Guided breath work. Yeah. Simple posture work, whatever. When people learn how to kind of switch off that stress mode, and I'm using air quotes, they
I think I did that
don't
a lot
correct me.
today. You
Don't
probably
correct
got that
me.
from me.
They start seeing massive improvements. Would you not agree to that?
No, of course, of course. And look, man, I don't want to get dark, but I think the problem is in people, us included. I want to exclude myself from the people, but we don't appreciate it. So it's like, that's the thing. Like I find patients coming in the office. So I've already got them in the sense that they're mentally ready to spend that $100, right? Which is like already like, why is that even an issue? It's your life. But regardless, when they're here, they're not really here.
Yeah.
And I can't even tell you like how many times throughout my treatment experience with a patient when I'm doing my best to be fully present and I'm not perfect, but I'm not checking my phone. Their phone
Mhm.
goes off like, excuse me, doc, it could be my son. It could be, I'm like, you're here for, I mean, my patient's here for a while. So forgive me. Like, maybe the doctors are spending 5 minutes. It's even more of an issue, but they're here with me for an hour usually. So I can maybe see it, but it's too much, man. It's too much.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. The lack of presence.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I'm with that. Yeah. Put your phones away, people, and just keep them away. If it's an emergency, they'll call back like 2, 3 times. You pick it up,
And
whatever
start with
the
five
case may
minutes.
be.
Start with five
Um,
minutes. Actionable
yeah.
step. Put it away
Yeah.
for guys. Everyone who's listening, try
Yeah.
this. Take the phone. Maybe not right this second. Maybe you're using your phone to watch this. Put it away for five. Put a timer on, not on your
Yeah.
phone. Look at a clock or look at your watch, and just 5 minutes. Don't look at your
Yeah.
phone. Put it away, and that 5 minutes is long.
Yeah.
And then it can become 10 and it can become a
Yeah.
half hour. And then you can introduce breath work during that time, slow breathing, awareness, presence of self, listening to the trees, wind in the trees outside. And this sounds
Yeah.
so silly, right? It's like, it's why are health coaches, why is there so many more health coaches now than there are doctors,
Mhm.
right? It's an interesting phenomenon that's happening, or people are paying attention in different ways. And all these
Yeah.
people are doing, like, I laugh all the time. I think I've told you this. I don't know if we did it on a recording or in private conversation. Like, I went through, almost 10 years of schooling, 13 cadavers, weeks of board exams, national licensure, state license, national board exams, state licensure, $250,000 in debt to get out of school and tell people to relax and listen to the wind in the trees. It's so mind blowing, man. It's a little stressful, you know, but that's literally
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
missing in the healthcare of this
Yeah.
country. And
Yeah.
we need to appreciate it.
Yeah. One piece of advice that I learned from someone is they have this bowl by their kitchen table, and when it's dinner time, they're very deliberate about this. They will take everyone that comes to the dinner table cannot sit at the dinner table without putting their phone in that bowl. Period.
Yeah.
End of story.
Or
And it's funny
Nintendo or
because
laptop or
yeah,
watch.
or watch. And it's funny because like a lot of times, like their phones are going or they're ringing in the bowl, and they're all like at first, but then it was like normal. And then that kind of that, sparked conversation and, and so on. So that's one thing that you guys could try. But anyway, I love this. I love that we kind of stayed on this topic. I know we were going to talk about the kind of the future of healthcare and AI and, all that stuff. You're coming back. So I think this has been great. And I love that you're becoming a regular on the show. And maybe that's what you and I need to do, man. Maybe we just need to kind of take these topics and just kind of shred them to pieces. Um, so I
I'm
love this.
open. I'm open. And we
Yeah,
talked a little bit,
yeah,
and we have a couple more minutes. I don't know if you want to touch on more of like, it's funny because the other side of it, right? Swinging
yeah,
all the way to the side of like chill out, meditation, don't spend
yeah,
money, don't use technology, put away your
yeah,
technology is
yeah,
well, but there's a lot of technology and we get excited. I mean, both of us get excited about using technology also to reduce stress or to impact our health in a positive way.
yeah.
So maybe as a forethought into the next, if you want to dive deeper and tear it apart next time, and go deeper, we can still touch on it for like how much time we got. And we got a couple minutes if you want. Maybe last topic, thinking about, how is AI changing or how is biohacking with AI changing and, improving functional medicine. If you want to, for a couple minutes, we could touch on it or we could leave it totally for next time. Whatever you want, man. You're the boss. Leave it.
I think we'll leave it for our next episode.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, definitely cliffhanger. And this is where kind of I go deep into kind of my thoughts on it too. And I'll be cheating myself out of what I want to say. So
Awesome. I
we'll,
respect
we'll
that.
keep it for next time. But Dr. Noah, and I always bounce back and forth, Dr. Noah, Dr. Segal. So if I'm offending you in any way, I apologize.
Wait,
But I feel like we've become really close friends, man. So I appreciate your time. Thank you again for
thank you.
joining me today. Honestly,
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm looking forward to the next time.
that's a wrap, right? Another Beyond Adjustments episode. A huge thanks to Dr. Noah Segal for coming back. And at this rate, we might need to rename the show But if you want to learn more, check out drnoahsegal.com and ifoundwellness.com. And of course, subscribe, share, and stay beyond adjusted. Until next time, folks, we'll see you.